From Miller Waldrop Studios, this is Campus Live.
What's up, Campus Live fans? It's Lane here in the Miller Waldrop Studios today to bring you another edition of the Guns
Blazin!
podcast, episode number 20. As always, I'm one of your hosts, and alongside me, it's been a minute, but for today's episode, Mr. Logan Wilson is back and better than ever. He was on the road for a long time with the softball team. So Logan, how are you doing?
Oh yeah, I'm great, man. I'm finally back in Lubbock. Feels good to be back home for a couple of days. You know, get the weekend back home. So I'm glad to be back. And we got a interesting show, to say the least, to talk about today. A lot of information came out this week.
Yeah, it has been a crazy week, to say the very least. We will be discussing, of course, all things Brennan Sorsby. We'll recap the NFL draft and kind of talk about Texas Tech and some winners in that. Obviously, we'll try to give you a little bit of updates for the men's basketball portal stuff going on for Texas Tech and kind of look around the country. But first off, before we get into all of that, we just wanted to thank everyone for tuning in every single week for all of our episodes. And we ask that you make sure to like all of our videos and follow and subscribe to all of our social media platforms, wherever you're seeing our content at the Guns Blazin podcast or at Campus Live TTU, and as well as thanking all of our sponsors for the Guns Blazin podcast. First off, with Roof Masters of Lubbock. Fans, with storm season, of course, now in full effect, if you have any damage or holes before we have a bad storm here in Lubbock, make sure you go ahead and check out Roof Masters of Lubbock to get all of those damages repaired. And then, of course, we also want to thank our sponsors with JSI Industries and the Exceptional Community Hospital here in Lubbock. And I think we can go ahead and maybe shout out the Exceptional Community Hospital here in Lubbock with our injury report segment, because I think this could kind of fall under the injury report segment, because just the way that we might not have this player for next year. So, fans, it's time for this week's injury report presented by the Exceptional Community Hospital. And before we hop into this injury report, we just want to take a moment to recognize the Exceptional Community Hospital as a proud sponsor of Campus Live and the Guns Blazin podcast, and be sure to visit their 24/7 state-of-the-art hospital and ER located at 6401 Spur 327 in Lubbock. They accept all insurances and have short ER wait times. Once again, the Exceptional Community Hospital is proud to support this week's injury report on Campus Live. Brennan Sorsby, Logan. Obviously, before we get into the discussion, Brennan Sorsby was the number one overall quarterback in the transfer portal. He was one of the best quarterbacks in the whole entire country. And throughout this spring, obviously being at practice, he has looked the part in every single way. We've kind of compared him. The way he's built, he's 6'3", 240, kind of like a Josh Allen light, the way he plays. And that's kind of what we expected to see throughout this whole entire season. But Monday, April 27th of 2026 is a day that will go down in Texas Tech sports history, I think. It's announced that Texas Tech quarterback Brennan Sorsby is going on a medical leave of absence to enter a residential medical program for a gambling addiction. Logan, when that notification came across your phone or wherever you saw it, what was your initial thoughts?
Initial thought was, this can't be real.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's been a lot of issues in the college world now with gambling, and when you see, your own school, getting involved in this, and obviously this is not just anybody. This is the starting quarterback, arguably one of the best quarterbacks you're going to have maybe ever, especially in the past. He's one of the top quarterbacks Texas Tech would have ever had. And just to see, at the time, not a lot of information had been brought out. Anytime you see gambling, it's a big deal. I think the one thing that stood out is he was basically admitting that he did have a problem. Yeah. And that's probably what kind of separated things for me. When I thought of it, was like, this guy seems to be the first one to actively admit that he has gambled and he has a problem, and he's seeking to get help. And obviously I was hoping, for the best, and not just for the team, but for him personally. But it was definitely a day that, wish I didn't have to see. It was tough to get through.
Yeah, before we kind of, get into the facts of this whole situation, like Logan said, Brendan, if you ever were to see this, I hope you do, get the help that, obviously that you are seeking for your addiction. Obviously, some people kind of play off gambling addictions, but it can be just as severe as a drug or alcohol addiction. So, Brendan, I hope you get, the help that you obviously had been seeking, and just a crazy situation. And like I said, as we head into the facts of this whole story, this could end up being one of the biggest stories maybe in the history of college football. And, you heard Paul Feinbaum earlier this week on Get Up on ESPN. Now that we know that this is a true addiction, him entering the rehab program, this isn't some ploy, from to try to cover him up or something like that. This is a true addiction. Brendan did and does need help. And at one point, Paul Feinbaum, he was talking, and he said that he had discussed with a very popular sports handicapper. Obviously, if you're not familiar with what a sports handicapper is, that means they are a very well-known gambler in Vegas or wherever they live, and they are good at their job. They can do it for a living. And he projected, and these guys have a ton of sources. Those top handicappers, they know a lot of stuff. He said that over 75% of college-aged males regularly bet on sports gambling, or however you want to phrase it, and that he would average that more than 25% of collegiate athletes bet regularly on college sports. So coming from a guy that lives in that space every single day, he knows who's gambling and who's not. A lot of those guys have very good ideas of who is and who isn't. For him to come out and say that over 25% of collegiate athletes are gambling, Logan, is pretty shocking. And I would imagine, like Paul Feinbaum said, just the tip of the iceberg for this whole entire deal.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we've seen, and I know we're going to get into it here later, of some of the past incidents involving gambling, but it is a huge deal not only in collegiate sports, but in the professional sports space now as well. But it's so, domestic, like it's out there in the world. Like, you see podcasts, ESPN Bet. It's over every game. They preview ESPN Bet. The lines are on the bottom of the screen. It's in the bottom right corner constantly about getting promo bets on all of these different websites. DraftKings, FanDuel, I mean, all of them, Underdog. You see commercials all over the place on ESPN, Fox regularly. And then you're now seeing it in stadiums. You're seeing in the Las Vegas Raiders, they have a sports book in their stadium. And I think that was brought up by Chris Lovell, shout out to him on his podcast as well, that Texas Tech has played in multiple stadiums that have been name right or sponsored by a casino and hotel.
Yeah.
That they have played in basketball and football. I think that just shows you that they are pushing these betting websites and these casinos directly to these athletes without direct, it may not be what they're looking. They're not looking for these athletes to bet, but they're pushing it so hard that it's just these, like you're saying, college-age males are already prone to betting. Now you're pushing these to athletes with high dollar amounts in their bank account that have the ability to bet. And you see guys like this, like Brendan Sorsby and some other guys that they get caught up in the game, and it's hard to see, and I don't know how you stop it.
Yeah, because for Brendan, if the story is correct about him when he was at Indiana and Cincinnati, those are two states where gambling is legal for to have FanDuel on your phone and stuff like that. And obviously there is it and I'm not making excuses for him, but for a young athlete like that does have a good handful of money, that it's legal in his state, that could blur some lines. Obviously, if it's true that he did bet on his own team in 2022 for Indiana, obviously that's completely different. That's you can't do that. But it said he was betting on balls and strikes at Cincinnati Reds games, UCF or UFC matches, horse racing, etc. Those things are actually legal. Not the balls and strikes, but UFC and horse racing. If you are a college athlete, you are allowed to bet on things like that if you are in a legal state. But like I said, having that access, I mean, even in the state of Texas, technically it's not legal here, but you can still download Prize Picks. You can still download Underdog and still gamble on those apps, And unfortunately for Sorsby, really where he probably did himself in was betting on his own team in Indiana in 2022. Wasn't to lose or anything like that, and he did not participate in the game, but it is clearly stated in the NCAA betting guidelines that if you bet on your own team, it is a permanent suspension from the NCAA. And we'll discuss the Cincinnati angle here in a second, but hearing that he did bet on his own team, Logan, what was kind of some of your initial reaction whenever, obviously, we hear he has the addiction, and then it comes out a few hours later that, oh man, he actually bet on his own team.
Yeah, I think that when initially you saw the betting, he's going into treatment for betting. You say, okay, well, certain things, what did he bet on? There's some things that, are allowed, like you're saying. I think what really kind of put this all into trouble is the NCAA allowing student athletes to bet on professional sports when they passed it, and then a month later rejected that and changed it. So now you're kind of putting athletes in this space where it's like, okay, well, you said it was legal for a little while, now it's not. So like, what exactly? And if I already did place a bet, am I grandfather? Like, there was so much, give and take there that it set a bad precedent for these student athletes. But when I saw that he was betting on his own team, initially the first thought was, that sounds like insider trading. Like, that sounds like he had knowledge of, because, yes, he could have been betting only for his team to win, but did he bet on every game? Because if he didn't bet on every game, then he thought my initial thought is he thinks he's going to lose the ones he didn't bet on.
Yeah.
Like, that was my first thought of he has some information about the team that they're playing or his scouting report that says, oh, we're probably going to lose this game, so I'm not going to bet. That was the initial thought. Obviously, I'm not Brendan Sorsby. I don't know what his thought was, but when I saw Indiana games and only games he bet on to win, my initial thought was, yeah, I'm not betting to lose, but I don't think we're going to win.
Yeah.
I think there's also some truth to that as well, because no matter what, when you bet, you're not betting to lose. Like, I'm not betting my money to lose it. Like, I'm going to try to win no matter what. And I just think he hadn't. Then I think that's what the NCAA thinks, right? That's why it's a death penalty in college athletics is you have insider information. You have more information than the public, and you can bounce that off of lines. And I think that's when it gets really, really hairy. And I think that's probably why he's in the trouble that he's in.
Yeah, you might a few questions, kind of that I had thought of, those games he bet on for Indiana, if he won those games, is that where he got the itch, to continue to where it turned into him having 10,000 bets, almost averaging over 20 bets per day, according to Pete Nakos. That's, like we said earlier, that's when this is a severe, he had a severe problem, and we're not really sure if it stopped when he came to Tech or when it really stopped. But what we do know is that apparently, according to USA Today, Cincinnati knew about his addiction before the 2025 season. And, once again, I'm not saying that, Brendan isn't at fault here for this because, he knows the rules. But for Cincinnati to have known that, Brendan has this issue, but still use his talent to their benefit and still pay him $1 million to be their quarterback last year, the athletic department at Cincinnati, straight up, they're just not good people. I mean, if you're letting your own athlete, that he has an issue like this, you're continuing to let him play for your own benefit, and then you're giving him money to support his addiction. But then it just so happens coincidentally that whenever he leaves your school and you're in a lawsuit with him over his old NIL deal, that's when this thing just happens to leak out. To me, that's just it's just scummy, and I would imagine that Cincinnati gets in a lot of trouble with this as well, Logan.
Yeah, it's a malpractice on their part to allow a student athlete, because the number one goal obviously is the well-being of the student athlete. Yeah. It should be, and I feel like that is a definite compliance issue that Cincinnati will have to face, whether it's the NCAA that forces them to face it or face it internally, because it's bad for not just for the athletic department, but for the entire university. And the people who are not involved in athletics, who didn't probably know what was going on, the president, the chair, they're going to have issues with that. But again, yes, Britain is at fault as well. But yes, they were funding an issue that they knew was a problem, and yes, it's bad on all parts, and it's a bad situation for everybody. Nobody wins in this.
Yeah.
And we don't even know about about the Indiana aspect of this.
Yeah.
Did they have any ability to know? Maybe they didn't. I mean, he was only there for one season. He was a redshirt freshman there. I mean, they could have no possible idea what was going on. It's just, it's a bad situation.
Yeah, I kind of had this thought, obviously whenever you're a collegiate athlete, you know what you can and can't do, and obviously betting on your own team is a big no. But do you think it's possible that because of how he was ranked coming out of high school, like he was a last second Indiana offer, a low 3-star, you think that at that time when he was doing that, he thought, man, there's no way like I'm ever going to be caught doing this? Like, if Brennan were to imagine himself 3 years down the road and he's a $5 million quarterback, he's a first-round pick potentially, you think that kind of played into this? Like he never really thought he'd be as high profile of a player as he is today?
Yeah, I think that there probably was, a thought of I also think there might have been a thought of, I need the money. Like at the time, I need the money. I'm not getting paid what these guys are getting paid. And at that time, it wasn't, what it is now. But yeah, I think I agree that, he didn't expect to be high profiled and have enemies and have people in the public eye, every day. He now plays for Texas Tech, which, like it or not, is one of the most high profiled schools and football teams in the country now, whether by people like him, people hate him, it is what it is. But yeah, I don't think that he expected it to ever get to this point, and I think it was too late.
Yeah.
When he did, I think even at Cincinnati, he became one of the high-profile quarterbacks, but I think it was just too late. And it's just a bad situation for him, and I'm sure he could take it all back. He would, because he could potentially lose out on a lifetime's worth of money.
Yeah. And I think, really the only other case that's somewhat similar is the Hunter Decker's case at Iowa State. Which his was, a lot volume-wise. I think it was like a group of athletes or something, and there was like 200 to 300 bets or something like that. Obviously, with Brennan, it was over 10,000. But Hunter, it really showed, the technology that, these NCAA officials and school officials have to track this and make sure it's not going on. Because if I remember correctly, Hunter's account was under his aunt's name, and all that he did was like a $15 bet on his team to win, similarly to Brendan, his team to win. And in Hunter's case, it wasn't even under his name. For all we know, we're pretty positive Brendan, it was in his name.
That's what it sounds like.
And it's what it kind of sounds like. But, Hunter, sounds like his was kind of similar, and he immediately got the lifetime suspension, and pretty sure he went D2 after that or something like that. But if you're comparing cases here, Brendan, he finds himself in some deep water, Logan.
Yeah, 100%. The technology they use, the bet apps here at Tech, they use a specific, program or mobile app that tracks any data that on your any betting, anything across all of your phone. And it seems like Texas Tech said that they had not had anything pop up on Brendan Sorsby since he's been here at Tech. So potentially he wasn't betting. We don't know the full extent of what was going on there, but yeah, the technology is insane. I think like I was brought up earlier. I think the difference in the Brendan Sorsby story that we've never seen and we may never see
Yeah.
is the admitting that you have a problem and
Yeah.
admitting that you have been gambling. He is not denying that he has gambled. He is just we just don't know what he's admitting to. Like yes, he admitted that he has placed bets, that he has placed bets at so and so events, but I think what really deems the death penalty is if he is found guilty of betting on his own team. That's where it's probably open and shut. I don't think there's a lawyer in the world that's going to be able to argue his way through that and get Sorsby another or potentially to play ever again. But another aspect of this is with, like you're talking about, the volume of bets, the 10,000 bets that could range anywhere from $10,000 to who knows how much. The NCAA, with the new policy that brought up in 2023, any bet over $800 is already 30% of your season.
Yeah.
And then if you bet on anything in your school, it's 50% of the season. So in my opinion, the best case scenario for Brendan Sorsby is he misses half the season. And that is the best case scenario for him. I just think that it's deep water, bad. He is going to be swimming uphill for a long time, and I just don't know if there's any way to reach the top. I just think that he's in deep trouble.
Yeah, and at that point too, you would maybe even quit. Like, I'm just throwing this scenario out there. Like, all this goes down. Best case scenario, like you said, like Brendan, say he gets suspended half the season. What if at that point, like, say Will does start week 1, like he comes back early from his knee or whatever. We're 6-0 at that point. Say Will has already been playing good, and like, unfortunately for Brendan, like, he might have lost a little bit of trust with this coaching staff and this front office, whatever you want to call it. At that point, would they even plug him in there? I mean, obviously we know Brendan's ceiling. I'm sure they would. I'm not saying that, but like at that point, your program guy and Will, who's done everything right, and Joey loves Brendan. I'm not like saying like he doesn't at all, but like if Will were to start go 6-0, like, is there a scenario where Brendan wouldn't even be the starter again? Like,
I think that there's 100% a chance that that happens. I think, then you're going to have to go through obstacles of how much do you pay him? He's only there half the season. Does that mean half the NIL money? Does that mean we have to renegotiate a contract? Does that mean altogether we just let you go, let you go somewhere else, like
to the supplemental draft?
Yeah, supplemental draft, or like, I'm not even sure how it works if the school lets you go. Are you allowed to go to another school in the NCAA? I mean, there are a lot of question marks that there's not a lot of time for. I mean, we're getting close to the summer, and the season is right up, right here in our laps. And I think that's another thing that makes it so scary for Texas Tech fans is the season's is right upon you. You finish spring ball, you get a couple weeks off, and then summer comes. Yeah, there's a lot of question marks and not a lot of answers at this time, and I don't know if we'll have answers anytime soon because I don't know if you want to get into this part, but the court, the court case that could come about of this, I mean, there's just a lot.
Yeah, and we probably won't even hear much. I'm sure we'll hear, kind of tidbits here and there from, the national guys, but until he, leaves this facility, I'm sure we won't even hear really anything, just about just really more about his recovery. But he has hired Scott Tomsett and Jeffrey Kessler as his attorneys. Tomsett, he was the one who represented Bill Self when Kansas was in deep trouble for the whole Adidas scandal back in like 2014, 2015, when Bill Self was facing a major lifetime ban for 5 different level 1 NCAA violations, and Tomsett did cut that down to only 1 level 2 violation, and Bill Self, he did only miss 4 games. And obviously he's still the coach of Kansas today, and they're still a powerhouse. They landed the number 1 player in the country was that 2 days ago or something. And then Kessler represented the plaintiff's counsel in the House versus the NCAA case. Obviously one of the it is the biggest case in the history of the NCAA. This is the case that started revenue sharing for all schools. So Brennan is in about as good of hands as he possibly could be in. These are the two biggest attorneys you could possibly have in a college case like this. He did have a legit gambling issue, but like we've been saying, he'd bet apparently on his own team. With all that being said, Logan, what are the odds that he plays next season for Texas Tech?
I think the odds are – I'm going to give it a 5% chance that he ever plays a snap for Texas Tech University. And I think that's being very generous.
Yeah.
I think it's closer to 1%.
Yeah.
I think he has a better shot of never touching the field again. And I'm not even sure. We could talk about the NFL aspect of things, but we've seen that NFL doesn't really like PR problems either. No. And this is a major PR problem because of the aspect of, let's say he throws an interception that's a little off target.
Was he gambling?
Exactly. It's a joke, but there are going to be bettors who bet on this guy all season. When he plays again, that are going to question if that was, influenced by somebody else. And I think that's the biggest thing that the NFL doesn't want any part in, and I know college wants no part in. And now you look back, if you bet on him all last season, is there anything that was a little off? Did he slide instead of going for that extra 2 yards on his over? These are just brought up, but I think that there's less than a 5% chance he ever plays again. And I think, you said, he's got the highest attorneys that cost the most money. Out of anybody you could get, those are the two guys you want. I just don't know if the NCAA, and another point, sorry for rambling here, but the NCAA has an opportunity here to get a lot of power back.
Yeah.
They have none right now as teams. This is one thing that they can control. Gambling has always been one thing that the courts have always sided with because they understand the grand aspect of what this could generate. And they have the power to do whatever they want to him. And I think with a high-profile guy like this, they have the ability to give him the death penalty and try to stop some of these other high-profile guys from doing the same thing.
I completely agree with everything that you just said. I have 5% or less, and like you said, I think the 5% is being generous. I think it's really more like a 1% chance that he 100%. Plays. And you brought up an interesting point there with the NFL side of it because I think, which this might be like a hot take, obviously there's been cases in the NFL where teams have been extremely lenient for their players, but I think college athletes, they're a lot more lenient with collegiate athletes because technically they are kids. Yep. They're younger and I think you've seen cases where you've seen programs be a little bit more lenient for a guy or in that sort of case. Obviously in pro sports too, mostly the NFL, they're lenient as well. I'm not trying to say they're not, but in a case like this, like you said, for an NFL team, if he did go to the supplemental draft, and he plays, if he messes up, it's you already and on social media, that's all you're gonna see is
whether it's real or not, whether it's true or not,
and it's not,
and
real,
it probably never is. Yeah, it probably will never be true, but you will have to deal with that every time he steps on the field.
Yeah,
and it could be like I said, the smallest thing of not going for the extra yard, running out of bounds instead of trying to juke a guy and get an extra 5 yards. It would be very small things that would just blow up into huge scandals. I just don't know if it's worth it.
Yeah.
And I think the closest thing that we've seen in the supplemental draft is Braxton Miller. When he left Ohio State, he got banned from Ohio State. Not Terrell Pryor.
Yeah.
Sorry, wrong Ohio State quarterback.
They were the same,
but he left, and the NFL took the same penalty that the NCAA gave him and suspended him in the NFL as well. I think that's another thing you're going to see. If he does go the supplemental draft, I think he still gets suspended in the NFL.
Because they take that very seriously.
And I think, and it's as horrible as this sounds, this is the worst thing you could be accused of in sports.
No doubt.
There are 1,000 other things that you could probably get around, right? If you had, a problem with alcohol, there's things that they can do to get you, back and better. This is not.
He messed with the system.
Yes.
So to like,
the way
because if he did bet on his own games, then it all comes into question where all of these games, which he didn't play in them, so
right.
He didn't play in them, so obviously he wasn't being a nuisance to his own team or anything like that. But if it comes out that we don't know all the details, there was over 10,000 bets. That's a lot of information to have to dive into to really see what was being bet on, and I don't know.
Yeah,
it's terrible for him.
Yeah, and we don't even have any information, like any idea of those are his bets.
Yeah,
I mean, a lot of people have a group or friends or something that you bet together.
Yeah,
who knows the information that he was willing to give or had that he just accidentally gave to unintentionally, because you have all that information at your disposal. And again, you're not betting to lose. Like,
games he was playing and he had someone else bet.
I mean, there are so many things. I mean, you're looking at like the LSU or the Alabama head baseball coach.
Oh, he
gets caught because he calls his friend who's at the betting booth saying, "Hey, I'm not starting so and so. Bet the other way."
Yeah.
Right? That's just, I mean, obviously that is an extreme.
Yeah.
And, he was permanently banned, fired, everything on that front. But there's just not a lot of information. I'm hoping for the best for Brendan Sorsby's case, not just for my own benefit and bias towards Texas Tech football, because if he truly did bet, I believe that he should be permanently banned. And I just think that that's the way it should be, because they're losing the integrity of college athletics. We already are seeing, a total shift in the whole landscape of things. Now, if you have people throwing games, shaving points, you're in a whole different problem. Again, that is not what Brendan Sorsby is being accused of. There is at this time, no federal investigation of him being leaked to anybody who's been doing this. But these are thoughts that everybody's having when it comes to this kind of betting scandal, and it just happens to be in our own backyard this time.
Yeah, it's man, I think this is something that we could maybe, you could have a series of episodes on. I think that this is just the beginning, of this whole entire investigation. I mean, this thing literally only came out 3 days ago, and we already have heard this much, and you are able to have this much of a conversation about it. It's going to be crazy to see. Obviously, it changes a lot of things for Texas Tech this upcoming season, but as we kind of shift from that conversation, as hard as it may be, we do have some other big topics to talk about, especially regarding Texas Tech basketball. Logan, it's been a while since you've been on, that we've been able to kind of talk about the portal and all this stuff. Obviously, we do have our backcourt. Maybe try to get one more guard here for like a cheaper guard, but our backcourt is pretty much settled. And they did get a very, very good backcourt for next season. Cruz Davis, Dre Gibbs Lawhorn, and Damarian Dennis. Obviously, it's being, most likely reported that Josiah Mosley and JT Toppin will be back for next year. And now that the 5-for-5 is potentially going to pass, Toppin could come back next year during the middle of the season and then come back for another season. Besides that, though, really it's just Mario LeCountalk and Latrell Hoover, Logan, and we are being linked to some guys, like Bryce Desert. We were linked to Hastings, but he just committed to Cincinnati. Obviously, we've been linked to some other guys as well, but they went their other ways. It really seems like Bryce Desert is the guy that we're going to be targeting here. What's just been kind of some of your thoughts on how this has all played out and what we could potentially see over the next, I guess, couple months or so as we finish this roster?
I think that they have been very, I don't know if the word is patient, but they've been very selective in
Yeah.
their groupings. Now, I think the main thing that you've seen in the portal is the numbers are outrageous this year. The portal numbers have been extremely high in terms of the money that these guys are getting. And I just don't think that Grant Company were willing to pay some of the numbers that some of these, especially the bigs.
Yeah.
The bigs were getting outrageous amounts of money. Um, I just think that, a lot of fans might be a little cautious of, well, we didn't have a roster. Like we didn't have 5 guys we could stick out there. Do we have 5 guys right now that can play Big 12 level minutes? We have the backcourt to do it. I think that we have one of the best backcourts in the Big 12 this upcoming year. The front court is still a question, especially with JT, not being here at the beginning of the year. Excuse me. Yeah, I think the 5 for 5 is great. I do think that they are waiting a little bit on this 5 for 5 ruling because it could have huge implications on the portal depending on what they decide. The NCAA comes out and says they're going to say that they don't want to grandfather them in, and I think they said something in the wording of they're going to have it for the next season, but they used a wording that was like that they're going to propose this. Who are they going to propose this to? They are the NCAA. Like, they make the decisions. I'm going to, I don't remember the exact word that they said they were going to do, but it was like more of like, I'm just going to say, yeah, we should do this. You make the decisions. Like you should just be able to say, this is what we're going to do. Whatever. They know they don't have a lot of leeway or a lot of ability to make decisions, and I think they're going to get sued out of the building if they don't grandfather these guys in, and they're probably going to lose. And I know that these NCAA lawyers are chomping at the bit, waiting for them to pass this. I think May 22nd was the date that I had heard of the voting, or that's what they're hoping for, and then it would go into effect on June 1st. I think they're waiting for the semesters in school here to kind of end and the seasons to end. I just think it has big implications on potentially maybe a reunion here in Lubbock and maybe some other names that you might, be able to pick apart on these, fifth-year seniors. It's been a very interesting search for Texas Tech men's basketball.
Yeah, and we were kind of talking off camera too about this whole 5 for 5 deal, and for the guys, that started school, these were some of the last round of guys, this year where you saw like those 7th-year seniors, those COVID seniors and stuff like that. But for these guys that, were true 4-year seniors this year, I'm sure they're looking at this like, well, those guys got COVID years, they got, medical years, whatever you want to call it, how can why don't we get that benefit as well? We should be allowed to have that extra year too. And, just throwing out guys that, we were familiar with that are true 4-year seniors, Darian Williams, Donovan Atwell. These are 2 guys that, they played all 4 seasons. They didn't have, that extra medical year or whatever you want to call it. And there's a good handful of those guys that are really talented and would have the opportunity to potentially come back for this 5 for 5 ruling. I think that, like you said, the NCAA has no power right now, and if they do pass it, they're going to get sued. It's just how it works. Who knows if they'll pass it or not, but like kind of in a similar way, I mean, it's April 30th today. We're shooting this. It's almost May. You if this does pass June 1st and say it does go to court, well, does it get completed in August or September? Then it's like, are guys being added to rosters, a month or 2 months before, I think basketball training camp starts in September or August or something, I think it's September, but like, that's when you really like start to get into the nitty gritty of this whole thing. I just think it's going to be hard for me to see them grandfather these guys in if the initial paperwork on this is that they're not going to. But, we've seen crazier things happen. Maybe they do. It would definitely benefit Texas Tech potentially with guys like, Donovan and Darian Williams. But that'll kind of take us into our Paving the Way to Victory segment. Fans, JSI Services is a proud partner of Campus Live, and be sure to visit their website at jsiservicesllc.com to learn about their asphalt/paving services, earth and dirt works, concrete and gutter paving, crack fill, seal coating, and stripping services. And thank you once again to JSI Services for their proud support of the Guns Blazin podcast and Campus Live. We talked about it last week, Logan. I asked Jordan this, but what would be your 2 paths to victory for this being a successful transfer portal class to, kind of cap it off here for Grant McCaslin and his Red Raiders?
I think you got to get a big, and the cherry on top would be dessert.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
No pun intended.
Everybody likes dessert,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I mean, I think he'd be a fan favorite
man.
here in Lubbock, Texas, man.
He has all-American type.
He does.
talent, yeah.
And, Texas has some big French, basketball stars. Wembanyama now dominating the NBA.
Yeah.
I think that guy automatically becomes the best defender you've had in the post in a very long time. You've seen what JT's been able to do, and he's a great defender. But this guy, he checks every box on the defensive side of the ball. Yeah. Blocking shots, switching 1 through 5. I think he is a home run if you could get him here in Lubbock. Sounds like they've been trying to get him for multiple years. Sounds like academics were kind of the reason they couldn't get him in. Sounds like he has fixed that, and it sounds like, according to all reports, Texas Tech is the lean here. But you have schools like Arizona and other schools going after this guy. That is my number one. Makes this a pretty successful class. But I do think that you have to get another backup big. Someone who is willing to play extended minutes early and maybe not play much late. And I know that's going to be extremely hard to find.
Yeah.
But you're going to have a guy that's going to play a lot early. Then JT Toppin's going to return, and they're going to take a cut in minutes. And it's just the way it's going to be. And there may not be a guy that's willing to do that. And you may have to go and overpay for someone who's not that great, And that's no offense to them, but you're going to have to pay a little bit more for this guy who's not going to play that much. And maybe it turns out to be a star. Maybe you turn out to find a diamond in the rough, a Donovan Atwell who wasn't, the most highly rated guy. Dessert's good, but, you got to find another big. And then I think that you might want to get a proven wing. You're going to have Dakari Spear, who's, a really, really talented high school player who hasn't played at the Big 12 level. Get somebody who's maybe played at a even a mid-major level, who's played consistent college minutes. And I think it's a successful portal. I think a 5 for 5, if you get him grandfathered in and you pick up a D5, if you were able to bring D5 back to Lubbock, then I think that's a grand slam. I think you just hit the jackpot on what you could do next season. And that's kind of where I'm sitting here. I don't know if it's possible, but I don't see D5 going to the NBA. So I think D5 is one of those guys that's going to find a lawyer, and he's going to find any way possible to get reinstated or get a temporary restraining order. And from all reports, he's hung around Lubbock quite often in the last couple of weeks.
If Trinidad Chambliss can get another year, then I think a lot of these guys, which obviously, they might not have, what's his name, Tom Mars is their attorney or whatever, but
he gets everybody.
Yeah, but, it's like, I think if you were to get the, the dessert after, your main entrees, you're with your guards, I think that you would have a legit 6, if reports are correct, about Mosley and Toppin, obviously, coming back. If you have, Davis, Gibbs, Lawhorn, you have Dennis coming off the bench, you have, Dakari, Mosley, Toppin, and then dessert. I think that's a very good core to build off of. But, once again, you might face a similar situation to last year where it's – which I would imagine they would add, one more piece, one more, like, major piece, rotation guy. But, God forbid if another injury happens, then it's like, you're really only relying on, about 6 guys again. So for this whole deal, get dessert, add him into this rotation. Toppin comes back in January. I think, if you're starting 5 to begin the year, is Davis, Gibbs, Lawhorn, Dakari, Mosley, and Desert. That's a very formidable starting 5. We don't know what Spear. We know he's going to be a very good player, but we don't know what he is obviously capable of in college basketball yet. But I think before, if you add Top into that mix and like Mosley becomes your 6 man with Dennis, I guess it would be 7 guys they'd have, but that's a good starting point. And it sounds like a Quintock and Hoover are going to come back too. Not that they're going to be big, contributors or anything, but Quintock gave a few decent minutes last year. I think he could be a good third big, and we've never seen Hoover play, so we don't really know what we have from him. But if you can add, I would probably say another wing, similarly to like an Atwell, where really good high profile shooter that's good at defense. I think that'd kind of be the cherry on top, which maybe that is Darian Williams. We don't know at this point, but I think guard play is going to be terrific next year, like we've talked about. I think Dakari Spear has lottery ability to be drafted in next year's draft. We all know what JT Toppin is. Mosley, I think, easily could take the next step into being an all Big 12 type player. And then if you get Desert, that's just, like you said, the cherry on top.
Cherry on top.
Yeah. And I think Damarian Dennis, too, I think he's going to be an underrated piece for this team. If you look, we talked about it last week, but if you look at the end of his season last year, he was averaging close to around 15 points per game to end off Wyoming season. He's a younger guy. He's only going to be a true junior this next season, really starting to come into his own. And if he can be like your 6th man, I think he could be a very valuable piece to your roster heading into next year. Obviously, though, got to get Desert. He's the
main guy.
He's the guy that you really, really need. But I think if you cap that off and get Desert, it'd be a win.
Yeah, it's like when your child wants dessert before dinner. That's what we need.
Yeah.
I think D5 probably likes dessert, right? Yeah. I mean, D5 and dessert in the front court. I don't think I wouldn't mind that.
Yeah.
I think D5. It seems like reports are, if it does get passed, that he understood he made a mistake leaving. I think both sides know they could have used each other, but I'm not going to bet on something that may not happen. But this team is going to be, they're going to be good. They're good every year. I just don't know if they're going to be the echelon that Texas Tech fans are looking for, and we'll see what happens. We got a couple more weeks here, but yeah, Bryce Desert has got to be number 1 on the list of targets, and being able to lock that down and get him into school has got to be priority number 1 for the staff, because if you don't land him, I don't know where you go.
Yeah, I don't either. But we for our 20th episode, we wanted to give you guys a chance to ask us some questions, so we can kind of skim through some of these. We did get some good questions from you guys, so I liked this one. So, how much? Obviously, we got a bunch of Brennan Sorsby questions, but how much does Brennan Sorsby's situation realistically change Texas Tech's ceiling in 2026? We really haven't talked about this, that much so far, but
drastically.
Yeah,
in my opinion, drastically. I think this team goes from, ceiling, you could have made it to a national championship game, depending on what route you had. Now I think you're a playoff team. I think that you really are looking like the goal for Texas Tech fans this year, I believe for majority of them, was let's win a playoff game. Like, we got to it, now let's win one. Now I'm at the point where let's score a point. Like that, and that's no disrespect to anybody in the staff. I am a Texas Tech believer. I love Texas Tech and the football team. I believe in everybody there. But with a quarterback coming off a severe injury, where his legs were a big part, Will Hammond's legs were a huge part of why he was so good last year. I think that in rushing him back now, having him, with the full year, I thought it was perfect situation to have him go in to 2028 as your starting quarterback. I just don't know. Like, there's so many question marks that this ceiling has dropped drastically. And I could be wrong, and we could be, just as dominant. And I would be the happiest person on earth if that was the case. But I think that the ceiling, as of right now, has dropped drastically.
When you lose a first-round quarterback, potentially
The best quarterback in the draft, potentially.
That's the ceiling. The ceiling. I mean, realistically, it drops. It does, and
people who tell you it doesn't are just being a homer. No offense to any of them, but they are.
And I think if you had Sorsby, your ceiling is the national championship. You could even win a national championship with because that's how good he is. I think I would agree. It would drop your ceiling to probably being a quarterfinal team again, which that's not a bad.
No, it's not. No, I'm not trying to say that I'm not taking it for granted. I'm just saying the new expectation for Texas Tech is not to win the Big 12 championship anymore.
Yeah, because we did that last year. We got over that hump. The next hump is to win a playoff game. And I mean, you still could.
Yeah.
I mean, it just all depends on how this season plays out. But losing Sorsby potentially is it's a big deal. That's why it's the story that it is. Everyone knows how good of a player he is.
Reports were that if Brendan Sorsby was in this year's draft, scouts believe that he would have been the second quarterback taken, but could have pushed Mendoza for being the first quarterback taken. That's how talented this guy was, and that's why there was so much hype around this kid, and that's why the story is so big. Because if he was an average quarterback, this story would still be a big deal, but nowhere near the national attention that it is.
Do you think Texas Tech hits the portal again for more depth at QB, maybe like a D2 guy, I think the UT Permian Basin guy entered the portal. He was like a D2 All-American or something. Do you think they?
No,
I don't know.
I don't either.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think I read a report you had 5 quarterbacks on the roster with Sorsby. Now you have, as of right now, you still have 5, but technically you would have 4. I think you have enough talent on there to get you through a season.
Yeah, and we only saw him in limited action, but I think that they like Chubb Jones too quite a bit. I think he's a talented player. He's a guy that can use his legs as well. But
another guy coming off of leg injury 2 years ago.
Yeah,
seems like a common occurrence in Lubbock, Texas.
We just the luck is
not there.
Not there. Yeah.
Not there.
I guess we got this one. I mean, we haven't talked too much about college football, but I mean, since we're on the topic, someone left. Who is a potential sleeper team heading into the college football season for next year?
Oof.
I know it's kind of it's April 30th, but
I feel like college football is one of those sports where there's not as many sleeper teams as maybe like a college basketball, because you have the powerhouses, they're probably going to win.
Maybe sleeper to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
Whew.
I really like what Florida's done this offseason. I think that they have the right coach. John Summerall is elite, and he's brought in a ton of talent. And I think that they're a team that could sneakily, because obviously SEC gets a huge boost when it comes to the playoffs. So if they can just, they can go 500, they got a shot. I think that they're a team that could push the right buttons, and they're going to be a tough team to beat. I think they're a sleeper team to make the playoff.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't call them a sleeper by any means because they're LSU, but I've really liked what Lane Kiffin has done also. As much hate as he gets, I mean, he's
portal god.
He is. I mean, he knows how to get his guys in the portal. Their defense, we'll see how it shakes out, but their offense should be really, really good this year, like Lane Kiffin's offenses always are. I'm just interested to see how they travel to Ole Miss this year, seeing how that game is going to be the Chris Beard return on steroids.
As it should be.
Yeah, that's going to be very, very interesting to see. And I agree. I think Florida, they are what John Summerall's done, kind of getting them back to that Florida mentality of where they once were. Hopefully, for them, I think that they're going to be a talented team as well. But it's early. We'll dive a lot more into college football as we move throughout the summer. But
I think we're a prime example of it's too early to bet on a team. Anything can happen. I mean, the reports were, that Texas Tech was, huge. Speaking of betting,
Yeah, I mean-
huge betting favorites.
Yeah.
This happened. Betting scandal happens.
Yeah.
Now we're only at plus 100. Still a huge favorite to win the conference. Don't get me wrong, but the betting aspect of a betting scandal. I mean, look at that. We're still in a article about a collegiate athlete betting. There is a whole paragraph on
About changing.
the betting odds. Like,
Yeah.
come on, you're telling me that you're giving this kid more ammunition. Like, oh man, this is an article about
Yeah.
one of my fellow quarterbacks. Oh, that changed. That sounds
Let's
like
change
good
the betting
value.
odds, yeah, it's crazy. It's
terrible.
yeah. We had this. We'll do this one for our last question. Which team had the best 2026 NFL draft? We can give a few teams, and then which one team completely missed?
Oh, completely missed is tough. I think a lot of teams did really well this year.
Yeah,
I'm gonna say that I love the Cowboys. I think they had a great draft. But I think Tampa Bay had a really, really good draft. Getting Ruben Bain at 15 was arguably the steal of the draft. I think they had a really good draft. I think there was a lot of teams that did really well. I think that the Dallas Cowboys were also one of the teams that did really well. A team that missed. I just don't understand the Rams' philosophy.
100%.
You have the reigning MVP, and you took a quarterback at 13. You need a win-now player. You're the Super Bowl favorites. One of them.
Stafford's not getting any younger.
No, I guess not. But in the press conference,
No, I'm saying
right.
like
Right.
for their
Right.
window,
No, you need a
yeah,
win
yeah.
now. Yeah. No, I get it. It's like this, and then you see McVay in the press conference pretty much act like he wanted no part of Ty
Yeah.
Simpson. No offense, to Ty Simpson, good for him.
Yeah.
But God, it just didn't seem right. I think their second round pick was another guy that doesn't look like he's going to play much for him. I don't know.
Yeah,
I feel like they whiffed big time.
I didn't understand the Rams. I thought the 49ers had a weird draft too, which DeZon Stribling, like, he's a great player at Ole Miss, but him and then taking Kalen Black, which he was a great player for Indiana this past year too, but
Yeah.
they were taken way ahead of where anyone thought that they were, especially Kalen Black. Like, he was on some boards as like a 7th rounder, and they took him in the 3rd round. The 49ers and John Litch, I don't know if you saw it, some reporter asked him, he was like, why do you reach on your draft picks
I did see that.
every year? It's kind of funny, but yeah, I agree on the Rams. You are in such a small window now with how old Matthew Stafford is. He came off a great season. You got to go after it right here. And you were kind of gifted this pick at 13 because you traded with Atlanta, and you got this pick at 13. And the Rams, they got Ty Simpson. I don't know. Well,
Green Bay started the trend
Yeah.
of let's get a quarterback before ours is gone.
yeah. But teams who won, though, we're big Cowboys fans. I thought the Cowboys killed it. Getting Caleb Downs at 11 is
Great.
insane. I thought the Jets had a great draft. Getting David Bailey, getting Kenyon Sadiq, and then they still get a really good wide receiver in Omar Cooper. They got D'Angelo Pons in the 2nd round. They're just, kind of building up their roster really to go after their quarterback next year. Unless, Brendan Sorsby was to go in the supplemental draft, maybe the Jets go after him there. Well, that's a whole different conversation. But
I would like to add something to that, though. What pick are you willing to give up in the supplemental draft to get a Brendan Sorsby on pretty cheap? Getting off pretty cheap. Like, what are you willing to give up? Like, you got to deal with a ton of PR, so you might as
think
well
the
use that
Jets-
extra money to spend it on your PR team.
I think the Jets would probably give up some pretty high.
I thought they gave up at least a 3rd rounder.
Yeah.
Like,
What is there to lose? I mean,
not for the Jets, nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, you're the Jets.
you already
Like,
weren't expecting to have a quarterback this year. I
Right.
mean, they have Geno Smith. I mean, that's kind of the bridge for.
Yeah. No, I get. Yeah. I don't know.
We'll see. That whole situation is crazy.
I
But
don't even know if you're Roger Goodell, do you even let Brendan Sorsby, like, do you hold a supplemental draft? Do you even want to have to, like, I don't even know if I want to deal with that right now. Like,
Yeah.
let's just push you to 2027, see what happens.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully he's quarterback for Tech at some point, but I just don't believe that.
Yeah. And that'll kind of wrap up our mailbag segment. We'll quickly kind of discuss the NBA and NHL playoffs. Obviously, last night we saw the Rockets actually win another game instead of the Lakers clinching that series. So it's 3-2. There's a lot of 3-2 series right now in the NBA. Only the Thunder and the Spurs have clinched on to the next round. Obviously, they were the two best teams in the NBA this year, so it's no surprise that they have clinched and moved on to the next round. But Logan, you're a big Spurs guy, so what's been kind of some of your thoughts on how y'all have looked in the playoffs?
I think we looked great when Wemby was on the court.
Yeah.
The one game we lost, Wemby goes down. He's Wemby, man. I mean, he's in his own category. I've only watched the Spurs. I haven't watched a lot else except for the Pistons, who might be arguably the worst one seed I've ever seen in my entire life. They almost got beat last night until lost the series, but you know what? They pushed it back to push it to another game. But Spurs, going up against. I mean, now the Timberwolves with all the injuries that they have. Against Denver, I mean, that could be a series that now ends up going 7. Would not be shocked if it did to play the Spurs. I think the Spurs are in a good spot, though.
Yeah. As a Lakers guy, it's I don't know. They
King James.
They were terrible last night. LeBron played pretty good, but they're gonna lose to OKC anyway. Yeah, but. Yeah, as we and then the NHL too. The Hurricanes, they swept Ottawa, and then Colorado they swept the Kings. But as a Stars fan, they have Game 6 tonight in Minnesota. It's not looking too good. Hockey though, it's a little different. There's some crazy things can happen in playoff hockey, but Stars are dealing with a lot of injuries, and then we had another one last game with Arttu Huru. I don't even think he's going to play. Nils Lundqvist isn't going to play. They're already out. Sagan and Rope Hintz too, and going on the road. Minnesota's been the better team, 5-on-5. The Stars haven't scored a 5-on-5 goal in over 200 minutes.
Wow!
Only scored on the power play.
That is a stat for all you stat geniuses.
Yeah.
That's one right
That's
there.
how bad the 5-on-5 has been for the Stars, and tonight they're going to have to score if they want to come back to Dallas for Game 7. But I don't know. Have you watched any of the?
No,
y'all been so busy on the road.
Yeah, I have. I don't think I've watched very much.
Yeah,
I've been on an airplane more than I've ever been. I've probably been on more airplane rides in the last month than I've been on in my entire life.
I'm sure. Yeah.
It's all for fun, but
we'll give us a look ahead for softball this next week or two.
Well, senior weekend tonight starts tonight. So we'll have that series, and then Big 12 tournament next weekend, and then Selection Sunday.
Where would you have us projected right now for Selection Sunday?
If I had to say right now, I think we're probably an 8 or 9 national seed. Right now, we're playing for a super regional host spot. Top 8 get that. But we need to win out. I think we really do.
Which this weekend caps off the regular season.
Correct.
Right?
Yes, this is the last regular season series against Baylor at home. So we'll play those 3 games out. Then we'll travel to Oklahoma City, play the Big 12 tournament. Hopefully another Big 12 title, and then that Sunday we'll see where we're at. We more than likely, unless something drastic happens, we'll host the regional the following week, then the super regional the following week, and then Oklahoma City, hopefully, as we try to make our way back. But Big 12 champions, regular season champions for the second year in a row, so that was big. But we have bigger goals in mind. Yeah.
Should be great to see Texas Tech softball cap off their season. And that'll kind of wrap up things here in the Miller Waldrop Studios. Thank you, fans, so much for tuning in once again. And make sure to follow, like, share, and subscribe wherever you are seeing our content on Campus Live or the Guns Blazin podcast, as well as thanking all of our sponsors once again for their continued support of Campus Live and the Guns Blazin podcasts. And lastly, remember that Campus Live is your one-stop news source for all things Texas Tech and Lubbock. Wreck 'em.
From Miller Waldrop Studios, this is Campus Live.